Okay, I'm Moshe, it's my channel, and today is the 22nd of November. It's 9:44 in the morning here in Israel. I keep hearing a lot of distant explosions day and night. It must be the fighting in Lebanon. I hear the fighting in Syria pretty regularly if it's in the south, and I haven't heard anything in Syria, and because we're not fighting with them right now, but I'm sure we will. Ammon, Edom, and Moab, and I don't hear anything from Gaza. Okay, our weather today is for us. It's nippy. It's 65 degrees with a pretty steady, kind of strongish wind. And it's going to be a high of 71, low of 55. Tomorrow it's going to change somewhat, much more pleasant for several days running. Be highs into the 70s, 75, then 72, then 74. And the lows will be 59, 60, 56. It'll be a little bit warmer. You got to understand, for us, we're used to running around in 90-degree weather. Okay? So now it's getting cold for us. I mean, you're talking 65 when we're used to 90-something, so you got about a 30-degree drop. When I got outside this morning, it was barely 60 degrees. That's a 30, 32-degree temperature drop from what we're used to. So, if you guys are used to running around in 75, and then all of a sudden it drops down into the low 40s, so I got a t-shirt on, I got a thermal sweatshirt kind of thing, and I have a sweatshirt wearing a hat, and I've got lined blue jeans which have some sort of flannel or something lining. Because I'm sitting outside and I'm not moving around, so I gotta stay warm. So anyway, let me jump into the live stream and make sure everything is copacetic. Into the live stream. Yeah, we got picture and sound, and do a little bit of housekeeping in the chat, and we'll get going. Okay. Since we're a Bible-believing site, we'll do our praise. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 Okay. please pray that I have enough, I feel good and enough strength and stamina to get through this today. Appreciate that. And prayer requests. There is at least one. Let's see. Two. Someone wants me to pray about the wildfires in North Carolina and Tennessee. I didn't know about those, but now I do, and we do. So what we're going to do is we'll pray for all the true believers in North Carolina and Tennessee that the wildfires don't damage them or their property or their animals and pets. So we want to pray that all the true believers in North Carolina and Tennessee are not damaged by the wildfires themselves, their animals, pets, or their property. Okay? And we got a prayer request for JJ, Jack, JJ, Jack. Prayer request is for healing of the body and to be able to return to athletics. For JJ, healing of the body and be able to return to athletics. Okay, so there is allegedly some sort of a ceasefire that the Knesset approved. I will give you the rundown of this, and I'm real opposed to Netanyahu on many levels. I don't want to go into the whole thing right now. I call him the curse on Israel. He's not a smart guy. He's deceitful. He's shifty, and he does a lot of bad things. Okay, so I'll tell you where my concerns lie as we get into this on what's going on. I'm going to read to you the details. Now, their versions, this is the problem. The versions that Hamas is releasing of the peace deal tends to be slightly different than what Israel is releasing. And this could mean that the deal is not going to go through. Could possibly mean that. Or Israel didn't reveal all the details with us. I'm not sure. If you want my take on it, it's going to go through. But there's some differences, okay? So let me get into what Israel said first. Well, let's talk. There's a third version. The Qatar Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who was negotiating this thing, says the following: within 24 hours, the date of entry into force of the agreement will be announced. The ceasefire agreement subject to extension. I would assume it probably starts sometime tonight, maybe midnight. I'm not, as a guess, or in the evening. I'm guessing. The first phase of the agreement includes the release of 50 women and children from Gaza that are from Gaza. These are people that the wording's not right. It's probably translated from Arabic. It's 50 women and children that are in Israeli prisons. Okay. For children, they state under the age of 19. Israel states they will not release anyone who murdered an Israeli. Okay. This is what Israel is going to give up. The number of those released will increase in the following stages of implementing the agreement. Well, that's fairly vague. So that's what he said, probably just to, beat his war drum and look good. So let me find the Israeli version here. It's on my Telegram. So I was working on this morning, and first I thought the deal was going to blow up. Then I asked the Lord about it, and I reread it, and I think it's probably not going to blow up. But why they're giving different versions could simply be Hamas is just blowing their horn to make themselves look good in the world, and especially with their own people. This is a condensed version. There'll be a 4-day ceasefire. Israel's going to release between 150 and 200 Palestinian security prisoners. Israel, the Knesset passed it, and they're waiting for 24 hours to allow the High Court to challenge it. It did pass the Knesset, although the Ben Gvir party and I don't know which one, United Torah Judaism or Shas, said they will not support the deal. They were stating there's a high risk to the war effort. The soldiers and previous trades have resulted in the people we are fighting today. Members of Netanyahu's own party, the Likud party, said that they were surrendering to terror if they did this. The ceasefire should last until Wednesday or Thursday, but I think it's going to go later than that, and that doesn't make sense. Today's Wednesday. It's supposed to be 150 female and under 19 or under security prisoners released. Israel stops collecting flyover intelligence from Gaza for 6 hours every day. The problem is that the deal involves leaving open passage throughout all Gaza, south and north. So this is the stupidity of Netanyahu, or he really wants this thing to drag out so the judicial reform, which is really not going anywhere for him, falls apart. He doesn't want to go to jail. He doesn't want his trial proceeding, and he wants to rally the people to his side, and then he's hoping the people will pass the judicial reform, which they're not going to do. Israel committed to 300 humanitarian trucks. Now, I don't think it's one day. I think it's dragged out over the 4 days, including fuel every day, even after the end of the ceasefire. So he's giving them a large amount of fuel. So that's going to enable them to maintain their fighting and run generators and stuff to maintain their tunnel network. You see, Netanyahu is either a stupid individual or he's an enemy of Israel. Israel's trying to put him in jail. How do you think he feels about Israel? He feels that this government is going to lock him up. He could get 16 years in jail. He tried judicial reform so they couldn't lock him up. It failed. People protested in the streets to the tune of 6 digits, 100,000 or more people, very frequently every Saturday, week after week after week after week, Saturday night after Shabbat. It was unrelenting, and he kept trying to do the judicial reform, and then the government was going to come down. And I told you before this happened, months before, that he would throw Israel into a war to get his, to catch his breath and try to figure his way out of this. Netanyahu is almost fighting for his life. Will they actually give him 16 years in jail? I don't know. From what I understand, and by Netanyahu's actions, the criminal cases are reasonably strong, and he'll get convicted on some counts. Historically, he'd get 2 or 3 years in jail. He's, 73 or something like that. He's got a pacemaker inside his chest. It's not going to go well for him in jail. Plus, there's probably going to be financial penalties, and they'd strip him of most of the wealth that he has that they could identify, which could mean his house in Caesarea, which is probably in excess of $1 million, could go. I don't know. I really don't know. One of the things the jackass did is he negotiated a submarine deal with Germany, and he used a cousin of his or nephew or something that was a lawyer to negotiate the deal, and the guy wound up getting I'm not sure the amount anymore. I think it was $25 million as some sort of commission. You see what you're dealing with this guy? But he could still get 16 years in jail. He doesn't know the outcome of the cases. They haven't been dismissed. There's 3 cases. 2 of them are 3 years each maximum, and the other one is 10 years. What if he dies in jail? You understand his motivation now? So the war stopped the protests. I said this months ago. If there's a war, there won't be any protests. Months ago. Some of you, I'm sure, remember. And now there's a lot of opposition in the Knesset that is saying he's dragging the war out because he doesn't know what to do and he doesn't want to face the music. Then I also said if he feels it's imminent that he's going to go to jail, he would destroy Israel. Because if there's no Israel, no government of Israel, then how's he going to go to jail? Then there's no courts, there's no jails and stuff like that. So you got to understand the conflict of interest with this guy is of comic book proportions. It's like a Hollywood production, but it's our reality. Thus, I refer to him as the curse on Israel, or the curse of Israel. Okay? Am I the only one? No. Am I perhaps a little bit more outspoken than him? Well, wait till I read you some newspaper headlines from today in Israel. You'll see I'm not that outspoken. Okay. Just before, I want to make sure I don't forget, South Africa severed their diplomatic ties with Israel. They're closing the Israeli embassy. So in other words, there are no more diplomatic relations with Israel, like Iran or something, I don't know if I have. I used to have South African listeners, subscribers, and my advice, sincere advice to you, is if you can get out of South Africa, I think it'll light up. And there are, let's see how many Jews there are in South Africa now. The whole world's going to light up, but, you know. My guess is probably 40,000, but let's look it up. It's the largest Jewish community in Africa. South Africa has a total population of 60 million. So it's a substantial there's a lot of Jews there apparently that don't really practice Judaism and so forth, but it's someplace probably between the high would be 85,000, so it's someplace probably between 60 and 85,000, something like 70,000, something like that. I have some relatives that were in South Africa. I lost contact with them. My uncle, he actually went out there to see him. They had a shoe factory, and they got there, I think, before World War II, or in the third. I don't remember when. I didn't have much contact with them. I never did, you know. Okay. I want to read you the different versions of this. And this is what we hear from old Netanyahu. Netanyahu vows that the moment the hostage release and the ceasefire are concluded, the war against Hamas and Gaza will resume. Well, this is a massive opportunity for Biden and the other schmucks in the world that follow Biden to try to make sure the war doesn't resume. Don't forget that. Don't forget that. Biden is following Henry Kissinger type policies. He's trying hard that there will not be a winner in this war. They do not want to see Israel win, and they do not want to see Hamas win. They're on nobody's side but America's side. I do not think Biden has a good chance of pulling this off at all. But don't think he won't try, because he will try. The hostage deal reportedly includes Red Cross visit with all the captives in Gaza, or at least the ones whose whereabouts are known to Hamas, and not only the 50 being released. So what Hamas is saying is, a lot of Gaza civilians, the ones Biden says are innocent, those, right? The ones the UN says are innocent, and the UK and all of them, ran into Israel from Gaza when the Hamas soldiers came in. And they too raped Israelis and killed and looted and pillaged, which is against the Quran, by the way. Okay, so let's not get into that, They follow what they want to follow. And now Hamas is telling us that these innocent civilians, who everybody's screaming about that we've killed, are took hostages out of Israel back to Gaza. And now Hamas is saying they don't know where they are. Now, let's analyze this. Does this sound likely that civilians would take hostages back into Gaza? Not to me. Raping them and killing them and robbing them, sure. Taking them back to Gaza? I don't think so. But Hamas was offering $10,000 for every hostage that was taken back to Gaza. People forget that. So that Hamas may have extended the offer to any Gazan. So they said, hey, let me make some money, Apparently, the Palestinian Authority had Mahmoud Abbas in his slave for pay program, the Palestinian Authority version of Murder Incorporated. I was saying that he was paying them over $3,000 a month if their relative gets killed in an act of terrorism for the rest of their life. Theoretically, of course, he's not going to be around very long, nor will his organization. And if they're in jail, he pays them that money for as long as they're in jail. I had my signals crossed. Apparently, I was reading something in shekels that may have had a dollar sign in front of it, but it's about a little over $1,000 US a month, which is good money in Gaza. Their food costs them about 1/4 of what it costs us in Israel. I know the Escalate supermarket owners were bad, but I didn't know they were that bad. The way it works is this. There's supermarkets that have, 50 up to 238 stores around Israel. They're chains. And they're mean, evil people that squeeze profits. Okay? They're so bad that the prices in the store here, let's say Tiberias food prices, are going to be different than Savat, which is like, I don't know, a 30-minute drive away. Okay? So they look at how much they can get away with charging for the food based on the market and the competition, but all of them keep the prices high. This is why they passed the Robinson-Patman Act and the Sherman Antitrust Act or law in the United States, to stop particularly the railroads and other people from exploiting the people. But Israel doesn't have a constitution or anything like that. And you can see from Netanyahu, corruption is here. And they get away with this. I think they're bleeding us dry. Plus, I figured a rabbi's koshering the food, and there's nothing in the Bible about kosher. It's unclean animals or clean animals, period. That's Beulah deciding she needs to howl or something. I think she's calling her friends. Beulah! No house! Come on! Beulah! All right. So, that's something that came out, and I don't understand why the food is so massively cheaper in Gaza. Beulah, enough! No more! Don't make me get up. Now, all of this rising housing prices, rising food prices, has caused Israelis to leave Israel, and it's prevented Aliyah. Aliyah is a fraction of what it used to be before Netanyahu. Of the 40 missing Israeli children, Hamas plans to release 30, and it will try to look for the others. Well, they don't even know where the hostages are. You see, if they were giving these people $10,000 for a hostage, they want the hostage, right? Okay. So the story stinks. They're dead. What do you think they are? They explain. Some Israelis were taken captive by other terrorist groups, and some by the hordes of Gaza civilians who followed Hamas into southern Israel on October 7th. Their whereabouts are unknown. So they could be perpetually raping women, or I don't know what they're doing. This is what I'm hearing. This is coming from Israel now. The Israeli government approved hostage deal ceasefire with Hamas in Gaza. This was late last night. Ceasefire duration 4 days. Phase 1. Hamas releases 50 Israeli women and children. Israel releases 150 Palestinian prisoners, mostly women and minors. See, this is to give Hamas the victory. Now, to take the other side of the coin for Netanyahu, you got to look at the relatives and friends of the hostages and how bad they feel, and the political pressure and the humanitarian concern and so forth. Now, they didn't talk about releasing the Americans and the other people in there, so I don't know how happy Biden is. Israel will allow around 300 aid trucks a day. So it's 300 aid trucks a day. See, this sounds to me like Netanyahu wants to see the war continue. What does it sound like to you? To enter Gaza from Egypt plus more fuel. So they're going to get fuel up in Gaza City and stuff like that. Okay? Because he's safe from his criminal trials, and he's probably safe from the Supreme Court throwing him out. See, Netanyahu had a law passed by his people in the coalition a few months ago that said that the only way a prime minister could be removed from office is for health reasons, and that would require a 75% vote of the Knesset. So in other words, if he had a stroke and he couldn't talk and walk, you could remove him. Okay? Now, you know how stupid a law like that is? So if he was raping a child, I'm taking an extreme example, okay? He could not be removed from office if it was on video. If he was murdering people in the Knesset, shooting them with a gun, he couldn't be removed from office. I mean, I'm taking it to extremes. So if he's saying, so if what he's basically saying here is if I get caught with my hand in the cookie jar with corruption, you still can't take me out of office. So just a little before the war started, Netanyahu, the Supreme Court, looked like it was getting ready to strike that law down. It really looked strong. And they were asking for both sides of the party. There were people that were complaining to the Supreme Court the law should be removed. And then there's the Likud Netanyahu camp that are saying why it shouldn't be removed. So they were hearing the arguments from both sides, which is what that tells me is that they didn't just say, oh, we're not going to deal with this. It's too stupid. We're not removing anybody. No. Since the Knesset passed a law that he couldn't be removed, the Supreme Court would first have to remove the law. Then after they struck the law down, then they could say Netanyahu has a conflict of interest because of his criminal trials And to keep himself out of jail, he tried to revamp the whole government of Israel by, you see, a democracy has three sections. You have legislative, which is the Knesset, the Congress, they pass laws. You have the executive branch, which is the prime minister. And you have the judicial branch, which is the high court. We call it, you call it Supreme Court in America. Similar. Okay? So he was basically neutering the Supreme Court. So he controls the Knesset with his party and his coalition, and he is the prime minister. So he was basically controlling legislative and executive branch and neutralizing the judicial. So that's why they were calling him dictator or King Bibi or Caesar Bibi and stuff like that. Scary. Now, people in Israel are not up to speed like people in America, let's say. And, parts of, I would say another country like that that's up to speed is the UK. And there's, Australia is up to speed. A lot of countries are. Israelis aren't. They have a word in Israel they made up. It's not a real Hebrew word, but they made it up called, a Pell phone. A Pell phone, Pell is cell, so it's a cell phone, right? I mean, that's not a biblical term. They don't really speak biblical Hebrew. They don't really understand it in reality. They speak Ben Yehuda, modern Hebrew, which is, 100, 120 years old, something like that. That's what they speak. So they add words as they go along, and a lot of the words are Americanisms and stuff like that. Okay, so the word protexia means I know somebody, I could get something done, and the Israelis are proud of it. So they give money to the various political parties. You make contributions like in America and other countries, and then when they get in office, you go to them. You say, hey, my daughter works for this big company that, is doing government contracts, and, they push them into promotion. In other words, if you don't have protexia, you're not going to get the promotion. They don't promote based on ability. Now, that's not entirely true. They have to promote on ability. But they'll put senior managers in place that have no ability to be there. They have no education, okay? They have no skill set, no relevant experience, yet they're in the position. Got it? That's how Israel operates. And the people are proud of it with protexia. They think it's a good thing. They don't understand that when someone demonstrates protexia or talks to you, you should sit there and tell them, you're crazy. You want a corrupt government? Look where we're at today. Unaffordable housing, insane food prices, cost of living is nuts. A few months ago, they were rating it with like New York and Rome and London, and the people here make a pittance. They charge $3 tax on a gallon of gasoline. That's just the tax. We pay $8 for diesel here. Over $8. It's horrible to try to make it here. Okay? Unless you get a protexia job and you're making, $14,000 or $20,000 a month, and then you're fine. Our healthcare system it's almost free for me because I'm retired. So I pay about $350 a year for me and my wife, and there's no deductible on the hospitalization. And if you see a family practice doctor, there's no deductible. And generally you pay 20% on the medicines, but they don't have the more modern medicines. I haven't used the system in many years, and I don't intend to. There's protexia in the hospital. You go in, and they detect you're not a native speaking Hebrew. Now, what do I mean like that? Could you tell somebody in America talking English comes from Germany, Russia, Mexico, Japan, China? Of course you can. Even if they went to school and studied English for 5 or 6 years, you're still going to pick it up. Okay? There's an accent. Now, there are people that go to school and learn how to eliminate their accent, but I mean, you're talking about, that's like 1 out of 250,000 people do that. That's a Hollywood thing, or a radio announcer, or a sports announcer. Most people never would do that. So, Arnold Schwarzenegger went through that. His accent, if you look at his early movies, his accent was so heavy, and then over the years, it got better. He went to school and learned. But that was his profession. There's so few people that ever do that. So they don't treat you right. Okay, once I was in there many years ago, I had a finger infection, and the medicine was so bad that I wound up, quick story. I was cleaning my fingernails with a Swiss Army knife, and I cut the finger under the nail. And I was living in Tiberias. This is 35 years ago. Back then, the water in the tap that you turned on was not drinkable water. It smelled like low tide when you put your sink on. Seriously. You could shower in it. You could wash your hands in it. Stuff like that. But to drink it, what we did is we had a Brita filter, and we would pour the water in the filter, which got the bad stuff out, the chunks and pieces, right? And then you had to bring it to a boil on the stove. Now, you didn't have to boil it for 20 minutes. That's sterilization. They told you all you had to do was, once you bring it to a boil, you see the bubbles coming up, you can shut it off. And in the winter, it would cool pretty quickly because the houses are so cold. But in the summer, could take 4 or 5 hours to cool off. So we would sometimes pour it into the Brita filter after, but the Brita filters were plastic. You couldn't pour boiling water in, it would melt it. So you had to wait for it to cool off, and then you'd put the Brita filter in the refrigerator. So after about a year of this, I just ordered 5-gallon jugs of water with a dispenser and did it that way. It was just, and there were people years before I was there, not many years, there was low tide in the Sea of Galilee and people getting polio from the water. So it's not that way anymore now. You can drink good water anywhere around Israel. Our water comes from, it's a river or a stream. So it's better than the average, water in Israel, but I don't know what they put in it. They're not supposed to use fluoride anymore, but I don't know if they do or don't. And you're definitely going to have some chlorine in there. So I go for bottled water. It's relatively cheap here in Israel. They have lots of kibbutzes and moshavs that have good water in their bottle. So it's not imported, although they do have good imported water too. So that's what we drink mostly, but not exclusively. I do drink some tap water every day. I make coffee and soup out of tap water. I don't worry that much about it. It's very potable. But, so, this is just, the economy here is awful. And nobody, the protexia is killing Israel, and it always has been. It's called corruption, okay? I think it runs pretty deep in Israel, So if you want to if you work for a regular company that has 200 employees, you probably don't have to worry about protexia, Or if you work for a company that has even maybe 400 or 500, it's not a big deal. You work for a company that has 10 or 20,000 employees, it's going to be all protects here. So the biggest nincompoop incompetents wind up as the top level dogs. And they're S-bots, and they're the ones that are doing the corruption. And, you're not going to go get contracts from these big companies unless you're one of them, an S-bot. So it's all screwed up, the whole thing. It's just a miracle that they have money, and I attribute the miracle to Satan. Microsoft has offices here, Google has offices here, Yahoo has offices here. All these big companies have offices here. And then Israeli companies are heavily traded on the NASDAQ stock exchange. Okay? So I was in the hospital, had the finger infection. So I washed it after I cleaned it out. I washed it under the tap, and it got infected from the water. Seriously. So I went to the doctors, and they gave me antibiotics for it, and it didn't work. Then I went to other doctors, and then one gave me gram positive and one gave me gram negative. So I was taking 2 antibiotics at the same time. It didn't work. Then I started getting a low-grade fever, so I went to the hospital. So they had a Russian doctor there. He took me in a room, and he said he had to remove my fingernail. He felt that it would heal if the fingernail was removed, but it grows back, right? I don't remember what finger it was. It might have been the ring finger or pinky, or I don't know what it was. Something like that. I was getting ready. This went on for weeks. I was getting ready to think I was going to lose my finger. Okay? So I'm in the ER, and he takes me in a little room. He injects me with lidocaine. He comes back in 15 minutes. He says, it's not going to hurt. And I'm sitting there, and he starts to cut the fingernail off, and it starts bleeding. So then he puts a tourniquet on it. This is a doctor in Israel in the emergency room. He holds one end of the tourniquet in his mouth, and the other he holds with his hand, and then he starts working on it again. So the bleeding got contained. He probably used lidocaine with epinephrine, and it stopped. He bandaged me up. I went home. It still was getting infected and wasn't going anywhere. Then I had another fever. So I checked myself. I went to the hospital. They admitted me. So they get me in a room, and because I wasn't a Hebrew speaker like they were, they put me in a room with some tourist from somewhere in Europe and an Arab. That's how they started treating me. You understand? They didn't want to put me in with Jews. You got it? Okay. So they got my hand up like that, and I'm sleeping. They give you sleeping pills to go to sleep. Pain pills, really, or something. So I asked for one. He gave it to me. It didn't do much. I said, could I have another one? He said, yeah, and he got me another one and knocked me out, so I was able to sleep, right? You got to get up and schlep yourself like 100 or 200 feet to go take a shower. They don't have it in the room. So this Arab kid's there. They give you 1 towel a day. And his mother comes to the room and sleeps on the floor next to him, which is common in Israel. Relatives, I don't think it goes on anymore. It used to, would sleep on the floor next to the relative. So she doesn't have a towel. I come back in the room, and my towel's gone, and she has a towel. I felt like kicking her in the stomach and then elbowing her in the chin. That's what I felt like doing, But it would have been a bad scene, and, I just got another towel, But that's, what you're dealing with here, So then when you want to eat, and the food it's kind of healthy. It was, probably like American hospital food, So I ate it, People could bring you snacks and then, stuff like that. You could go out. Today you could go out and they have a gift shop that sells a lot of snacks anyway. And there's people outside the hospital that sell like falafel and shawarma and different things. You could walk outside and buy some real food if you want, All right, so anyway, I'm in there 3 days. So the first and second day is an orthopedic surgeon's working on this. He's making rounds with his residents. There's like 5 or 6 of them. So they're all looking at my finger. What do I care, right? And one says, should I give him this kind of bandage, a more expensive bandage, right? And the guy, the resident, the supervising physician is a Russian guy. So he looks at the guy and shakes his head no. You see, that was because I am what they call an Anglo, and they wouldn't give me the good bandage. You can't trust these people. I went to eye doctor about my bad eye, and I said, well, can you do this and that procedure? He says, no, we don't do that. It's all over the internet. In a million countries they do it. Now, if I was a native-speaking Israeli, I probably would find out they do it. I think, maybe I'm wrong. So I had a doctor in the healthcare system, a woman doctor. It was really she was an Orthodox Jew, an Ashkenazi like me. And she was from the UK, and she spoke fluent English, of course. And I told her about this, and she put the notes in the file. I said, this, all over the internet, they do this procedure, and he tells me they don't do it in Israel. I mean, what is this crap, So she made notes in the file, which wasn't doing him any good. It changed the way he dealt with me. But they're such morons. They don't even dilate your eye when you go to see the doctor. He sees 4 people, the eye doctor, the ophthalmologist, sees 4 people an hour. They don't even dilate you to look. You can't see anything if they don't dilate. You're going to let a guy like this work on your eye? I mean, yeah, if some guy came with a spear or Goliath and threw a spear in my eye, I suppose I would let him work on the eye, It is a healthcare system. I know a guy, he makes knives. I don't know him, but I know of him. His name is Ernest Emerson. He makes great knives, okay? I mean, this guy makes knives that are like, Rolls Royces. This guy really makes knives. So I'm really familiar with him. I used to get he's an accomplished martial artist. I used to watch his knife fighting videos, and I learned a lot from him. And so Emerson got older, and his hip broke or something. So he had to have a hip replacement. So Ernest Emerson gets it done in America, and then 90 days later, I see him on YouTube doing serious martial arts kicks. Okay? The people I know in Israel that have hip replacement years later are walking with canes, with walkers, with pain. What are they doing? They don't know how to do a hip replacement? What is this crap? You see what I'm saying? They think it's normal to walk around for a year or two with a cane after they don't use modern antibiotics. So hey, I'm in the hospital and I saw that. Then they started my IV the first day, right? And then the nurse comes in. She was a friendly nurse. Okay, I got to explain this to you. It's pretty hard to explain. I was a lot younger then, and they didn't know I was married. So they come in, and they all wanted to go live in America then. So all these women nurses are throwing themselves at you. I mean, literally. Okay. I had no interest. I had no, but they try, right? They flirt with you, is what I'm saying. Why? They want to go live in America. If you're nice to them and they get along with you, would they divorce you? Probably not. If they weren't so pleased with you, they'd live there for 5 years, and then they would divorce you and they could stay in America. That was the thing, to go live in America. The Israeli dream, If America wanted to really empty Israel, all they had to do was say, every Israeli can come to America and get a green card, and we'll give you $50,000 to get you started, and Israel would have drained. I'm telling you. It's a long time ago. Would it happen today? More so. More so. They don't. Well, maybe not, because a lot of them know how bad it is in America. But okay, it never happened. God didn't want that to happen. So they start the IV. Then she comes in and tells me, I got to give you another IV. But she says, I want you to know that they ran out of the IV they gave you earlier today, so I got to give you this other one. And it's like starting all over again because it's a different antibiotic. You listening to this? Okay. So I'm on the new antibiotic. The next day I get another nurse, a male nurse, which is fine. And he I think he was an Arab guy, and he comes in and he gives me the IV, and he doesn't clean the site, and I start getting a local infection at the site. This is in a hospital. You reading it? So then they tell me I got a local infection. I see him come in again, and I say to him, hey, clean the site. Okay, so he cleans it up, and then he puts it in. Back then, I was much better at talking Hebrew than I am today. So he cleans it up, and then, like on the third day, I told my wife, I'm leaving. I said, I'm not staying here. I'm going to lose my arm. They'll amputate my freaking arm before this is over, So I'm just going to check myself out. So the Russian supervising physician, whatever they call him, attending, I don't know, comes around and he looks at it, and I say, I want to go home today. He says, yeah, I think that's a good idea. You should go home. The infection was a little bit controlled. It got a lot better. They had 3 days of antibiotics, right? So, and then what happens? I go home. Everything's okay for a few days. It comes back. I go back to what they call the Kupat Olim, the healthcare clinic. And I see another doctor. Now, this was actually a good doctor. He was from Poland or Czechoslovakia. He had a ponytail. He was like an ex-hippie or something, And he was really a nice guy. So he talks to me, and he looks at all I've been through, and he says, look, I could take you to the hospital, and I could debride it. That means they put you under some light anesthesia, and they surgically cut all the stuff out that could possibly infect it. You scrape it out and stuff, right? He says, but, it's a surgery, anesthesia. He says, look, let me tell you what you do. Go to the store and try this. Buy Melech Anglit. Melech means salt. Anglit means English. And what that is in English is Epsom salt. So I go to the drugstore and I buy some Melech Anglit, put it in hot water. I get a bowl, like a big cereal bowl. I dump hot water in, I put it in, I soak it in there a few times a day. Shockingly, it gets better. And that was the end of the story. I went to get they take a sample and they cook it and they tell you what antibiotic will work on it. Well, they tried that once or twice and they couldn't get it to work. I'll be back in a second. That's the Israeli healthcare. And I don't think it's any better today. Now, this story with the healthcare is leading to a Bible prophecy. Okay? But let me tell you what happened to my wife. Maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago or something like that. She thinks she's having a heart attack. So, I don't know. So we had somebody drive us to the hospital. And we live close to the hospital. We go to the emergency room. And you get in pretty quick because of the heart attack thing. And did we ever see a cardiologist? No, not that I know of. We saw residents. They were Arab doctors. Now, you know what happened on October 7th, right? Okay. So we're seeing Arab doctors. Now, if we were old school native Israelis or Israelis that had been here a long time, we probably wouldn't have been treated that way. We would have saw a real cardiologist. So actually we wound up with two. One was a cardiologist, I think, and one was a internal medicine or something like that. And they were looking her over, and the two of them couldn't tell if she had a heart attack or not. And so they don't know what to do. So they admit her, and they do a blood test. But there's some type of an enzyme they say they could find that shows you had a heart attack, and it takes a long time to get it. So the next day they'll have it. So just in case, they admitted her, right? So she's in a room with two other heart attack patients, and they're separated by curtains, so there's 3 in a room. And they come back and they tell her they detected that enzyme, so they believe that she had a heart attack, and they have to do some catheterization to clear the blockage, right? So they schedule it for another day. So she's in the hospital again. And she has to go, they do these where they stick something up a vein and they try to clear a blockage, whatever you call it. And they schedule, I don't know, 15 or 20 of them in the morning, something like that. So I come over there like mid-morning because I knew my wife wasn't going to have it finished until about 11 o'clock or something. So I'm waiting around outside, and she gets mad that I didn't come there like 8 o'clock in the morning. I said, what was the point? They wouldn't let me, be around you and stuff like that. So this genius now, he's a Russian, and he's actually a cardiac surgeon or a cardiologist. I don't know what he was. He was the real McCoy. So he's working on her. And then in the middle of the procedure, he stops the procedure and says, we can't proceed because your blood vessels are weird. They're all tangled up. I can't get through. So he gives us some anesthesia, starts a procedure, and then aborts it in the middle. Now, what a normal doctor probably would have done was put some of that fluid in there that enables them to see with some sort of a machine the path of the blood vessels. But he didn't bother with that. That's shabby medicine. Now, if we were old school native Israelis, or we'd been here, 50 years or something, and we were talking and acting like them, we probably would have done the test before the procedure. But with Anglos, he figures, how are you going to complain about me? You don't know anybody to complain to. I don't care about you. Either that or he did shabby medicine on everybody. I don't know. I'm suspicious that they would have done the test if we were old school, or we would have used Protexia if we were corrupt, to try to get somebody to give us a good cardiologist, or we would have got a referral or something like that, right? Now you got to hear this. So she gets out, she's back in the room, and she's all ticked off because she goes through this procedure for no good reason, right? So they come around and they put a tourniquet on her here because they made a big opening to get the equipment up her veins or artery, whatever it was. So it was like a leather strap thing with a block on it to hold the thing tight. So she's there, and they tell her she can't. It's not clotting. For some reason, she wasn't clotting. So they tell her that she can't move around, and she can't get up and go to the bathroom, and they put diapers on her so the clot would take. And it's so tight, it's killing her. So she calls me up at night crying. So I get a friend of ours that's a native Israeli and knows people and stuff like that. So she gets into the hospital, talks to the nurses, and then says, look, you let me talk to her in private. She talks to her in private. And then things get better. And my wife calms down. And then eventually it stopped. It clotted and stopped. And then the next day she had to stay there again, and then they let her go. They were just watching her, it wasn't such a bad day for her. And then they let her go. So I'm over there in the waiting room. Well, I'm over there, and they have a room where they have food and snacks where you can go visit. You're not supposed to visit them in the room because there's 2 other patients in the room. So I have another room you go to. So I'm in there as an Arab family. The Arabs love using the healthcare system. It drains Israel. It clogs up the hospitals. And it's, they don't have to pay any extra money for it. And they believe in this healthcare system a lot, so they love having surgeries and stuff like that. And so there's a family in there with an old guy. I think he was a heart patient, and the kids and stuff were there, and they brought sweets and treats, and I'm sitting there, and these were Arabs. And they came over me, and they offered me the food that they were given to their relatives, which I took some. They were very nice. See, it goes both ways, okay? So, she gets out of the hospital. They give her a slew of medicines to take, right? And the doctor is still running around, oh, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. Why did you have a heart attack if I'm going to get it? I don't think he was entirely sure she had a heart attack. But he never got to the bottom of anything. And so they give her a whole slew of medicines, right? And we go home and start looking the medicines up on the internet. And these are medicines that they stopped using in America. They got bad side effects. They don't use them anymore. So would they have given me the same medicines if I was a native-speaking Israeli? I don't think so. I don't know. I don't know. But when you read Ezekiel 34, the cattle pushing cattle, that's the rich fat cats. Now, the wealthy people in Israel don't use the public hospital service. They have to pay for it. That's the law. So I pay for it. If it wasn't the law, I wouldn't even pay for it. You have to, this is some soup I'm drinking. You have to pay for it. They have a private healthcare network, which costs money. I think it would be, I would say probably for the 2 of us, 800 shekels or 900 shekels a month in addition to what we pay for the regular service. And then you get a network of doctors that are not in the public health care system. And they use the same hospitals, but you have different doctors. So even if you're not having surgery, you're going to be in the hospital, which is basically a bed and food and a shower, and somebody's there to help if something goes wrong, and they could watch you, and they could give you medicine, injections, IVs, right? But the doctor's different, and the medicines are, of course, probably going to be different, and that's what they use. So, where's the scripture for all this crap? I will show it to you. There's rockets coming into Israel somewhere now. Zechariah 13:8. And it shall come to pass that in all the land, call Haaretz, it's speaking about Israel, saith Jehovah, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die, but the third shall be left therein. And I will bring the third part through the fire, and refine them as silver is refined, and will try them as gold is tried. They shall call on my name, and I will hear them. I will say, it is my people, and they shall say, Jehovah is my God. Pay attention, it says, I will bring the third part through the fire. This, of course, never happened yet. And will refine them as silver is refined, and try them as gold is tried. They shall call on my name, I will hear them, I will say, it is my people. Now, where do we find a relevant scripture to this? You find it in Malachi 3, which I'll read to you. Verse 1, Behold, I will send my Malach, which is messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me. Who's the Word made flesh? Yeshua. Prepare the way before who? Before Yeshua comes. This is speaking of Elijah, the Elijah. And Jehovah whom you seek shall suddenly come to his temple. Who's the angel that God put his name in? It doesn't say Jehovah, it says Adonai, the Lord, whom you shall suddenly come to his temple. That's the glory of God of Israel. Even the messenger of the covenant, now it's back to Elijah, whom you delight in. Well, the Jews all believe that Elijah attends the circumcision of every male child, which is a joke. And they believe that he attends their Passover Seder's. So they said, or he might attend. So they set a place setting for him and pour him a cup of wine. And if it's safe enough, they leave the door open and he has a chair with his name on it in some cases. So he could come in and have Pesach Seder with them. And they all believe he's going to teach them the Torah, Elijah. So that's who this is. Even the messenger of the covenant, that's the Torah, right? The word for covenant is brit. Whom you delight in, behold, he shall come, saith Jehovah of armies. But who may abide in the day of his coming? Not the 2/3. Do you see it? Do you see it? Do you see it? And who will stand when he appeareth? Not the 2/3. For he is like a refiner's fire, and like a fuller's soap, and he shall sit as a refiner of and purifier of silver, and he shall purify the sons of Levi, and purge them as gold and silver, and they may offer unto Jehovah an offering in righteousness. Then shall the offering of Judah and Jerusalem be pleasant unto Jehovah, as in the days of old, as in the former years. Now listen. And I will come near to you to judgment, and I will be a swift witness against the sorcerers, the witches, the false believers that are with Satan and all that, and against the adulterers, and against the false swearers, and against those that oppress the hireling in his wages, the widow, the fatherless, and that turn aside the stranger from his right. Now that's what they were doing to me and my wife. And they do it all the time. You don't have much of a chance here of getting ahead. And fear not me, saith Jehovah of hosts. Did you like that? I think I did a good job. I'm a little biased, though. Let me check the chat. $52,88,000. I have no idea what you mean. Most have left? No, most have not left Israel. Oh, you're probably talking about South Africa. Yeah. Okay, I got it now. Yeah, I got it. So, Israel's ugly. Now, this didn't happen before Netanyahu. I was here before he was around. And, he had a seat in the Knesset or something. He was low level back then. And the Israelis used to welcome newcomers, and they used to try to be nice to you and help you. 30, 35 years ago. Netanyahu had been around running Israel for 20 years, and he ruined all that. He's a bad dude. So the implications of this peace treaty are pretty sad. Gaza's going to, Hamas is going to steal most of the fuel. Okay? Nobody's going to stop it. And that's going to help perpetuate the war, which people are saying Netanyahu wants to do. Keep himself out of jail. It's sad, isn't it? This is why in prophecy there's two yokes. There's the yokes of the nations and the yoke from inside. And it references, God says, speaking of the leaders of Israel, who told you to hold their nose to the grindstone? See, that's what he's doing to the Israeli people. And many that preceded him were also just as bad. Okay. So Netanyahu was very close to seeing the Supreme Court strike down that rule, that law that said you can't remove a prime minister unless it's for health reasons, and it has to have 75% of the Knesset voting in favor. So the Supreme Court would not be able to remove him. So they were going to strike that law down, and then we got into this war. The Israelis don't believe in changing the prime minister or the political coalition for that matter, during a war. And that's wrong. See, they don't have a lot of good logic, these people. Many of them are not educated. Okay? And they get protexia and they have important positions. It's ridiculous. Under Netanyahu, it used to be Israel had lawyers, but not very many. A kibbutz that had 3,000 or 4,000 people would find a few kids, maybe two, probably that's about it, and send them to law school at their expense, and then they would remain on the kibbutz and be the lawyers for the kibbutz. Well, Netanyahu reduced the standards for law school during his reign, and Israel more than doubled. I don't know if it tripled, it might have, the amount of lawyers they had. So you have a lot of disgruntled young people that got out of law school and have no practice. Who's going to go, you know? Then you have a lot of lawyers that just do it part-time. They do something else. And then you have real lawyers and real law firms, not as big as you do in America, but, you know, you have 25, 30, 40 lawyers, something like that. Very few of those. You could probably count them on one hand. And what this did is it got the Israelis suing each other. He knew that. See how it works? Then they did something curious too. To be a tour guide in Israel used to be a 2-year intense course. And then he got it reduced down to, I think, less than 1 year. I think 6 months or a year. I don't know, something like that. They cut it way down. And they made it much easier. It used to be a very strict curriculum. You had to learn all the history of Israel and everything else, you know. It was really a pretty serious, substantial thing. And they lightened the agenda and they made it much easier. So I met people that had friends, or they had, maybe I met one that actually did it. They went and actually did go through the abbreviated course and get a license. And there's not work. Why? The tourist companies are experts. Do you have enough money to buy a fleet of buses? I mean, where are you gonna, you know, it's all expert run. So, and they're drying up now, they're starving, but the government's subsidizing them somewhat. They got killed by COVID, and now they're getting killed by the war, but the war's not going on that long. COVID really hurt them. So, you know, who they don't get any work, you know. This is the Ezekiel 34, the cattle pushing the cattle. That's the espots. See, that's a different kind of protexia. Regular protexia, you don't have to be an espot for. You just go down and contribute money to the political party or the politician if you're choosing. And when you got a problem, you go down there and you see them and they sit down and they fix your problem for you. My son needs a job. My daughter needs a job. They need a promotion. They need this and that. And that's how they work it. And the people aren't astute enough to realize they're ruining Israel with this protexia. And they've ruined it. Now I want to read you an article from Haaretz newspaper showing you publicly that Israel is probably getting ready to get rid of this government. And it might not be that. It might be God is getting Israel ready to get rid of this government so they'll welcome the two witnesses more. I'll be right back. It's curious how Hamas lets civilians in Gaza kidnap Israelis out of Israel, bring them into Gaza and keep them as prisoner. And they don't even give a hoot about that. It really fascinates me that they're that sick. And I'm pretty sure Biden is trying to engineer this in such a way that there is no winner. This could be the setup to stop us from attacking Gaza anymore. I'm suspicious about this. Here's what I'm reading from Haaretz newspaper today. Netanyahu ignored all the warnings and looming threats. He's primarily responsible for the calamity. That's October 7th. Instead of dealing with the clear warnings he was given, the Israeli Prime Minister focused on crushing democracy. That was his judicial reform, establishing his status as the supreme ruler, and transferring resources to the ultra-Orthodox and the settlements. The ultra-Orthodox got fortunes out of the Israeli government for joining Netanyahu's coalition. And a lot of Israelis are very resentful about that because it was extremely corrupt. That's Netanyahu. That's what you get from him. He needed the ultra-Orthodox to pass his judicial reform, so he just started shoveling taxpayer dollars into their coffers. There's no better proof, I'm reading it from Haaretz newspaper now, there's no better proof of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's responsibility for the disaster suffered by Israel on October 7th than the letters of warning sent to him by the head of the Military Intelligence Research Division, Brigadier General Amit Saar, in March and July. Now, mind you, this thing that Hamas did probably took 2 or 3 years to establish the tunnel network, get the weapons, get the missiles, get them trained, and then attack. In the letters whose contents were published Monday in Haaretz newspaper, Saar warned Netanyahu that Israel's enemies, Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, had identified an Israeli weakness and damage to its deterrence due to the profound domestic crisis. Now, that was the judicial reform. Now, this is soft peddling it. They want to do an investigation on this, and I think the investigation is probably going to be done with the courts, but I'm not sure. There's all different kinds of investigations, but you've got to have somebody doing the investigation other than the accused. Israel has cameras down by the border, infrared, night cameras, day cameras, all kinds of cameras. Apparently nobody was watching the cameras. Why? I don't know. They had outposts, which are like towers, like you see at a prison or something like that. Only they're more immature. They're generally just built with wood, and they have a roof and walls, and and they watch with binoculars and stuff. Why didn't they see it? Then we have sensors, which detects people going across the border. Why wasn't somebody monitoring the sensors? And then we have trackers, which are usually Bedouins that could follow footprints in the desert, kind of like an old, the old West movies with the North American Indians knew how to track people. Okay? None of this worked. And then I was up that morning sitting outside, and I heard perpetual rocket barrages coming in. And I was saying, well, the IDF will start bombing them in a few minutes, and it took 3 or 4 hours till they started bombing them. People down in the south of Israel that were suffering from Hamas running around, like on the kibbutzes and stuff like that, were calling for help, and usually help would come in minutes. It took 7 to 8 hours for help. Just before this happened, Netanyahu, all of a sudden, Biden invited him to the White House. Previously, he didn't want him there. Netanyahu didn't want him there. Now, all of a sudden, he goes to the White House. He comes back a few weeks later. We have October 7th. You tell me. I'll keep reading. But Netanyahu ignored the pointed warnings which were sent to him before the decisive Knesset votes on judicial overhaul legislation, because that would have mandated him doing a preemptive attack on Gaza, I expect. Instead of preparing the country for the perfect storm, of which military intelligence warned at the end of March, he fired Defense Minister Gallant, he's since reinstated him, who had publicized the warning. The legislation and the dismissal were frozen at the time due to a sudden upsurge in the street protests, but Netanyahu took no interest in preventing the danger which Gallant had warned. Instead of dropping everything and ascertaining that the Israeli Defense Forces were prepared to confront the problem, Netanyahu humiliated Chief of Staff Herzl Halevi, who had asked to meet with him before the vote on the reasonableness law in July, and rejected Gallant's pleas to postpone the vote. The danger on the borders and in the territories didn't interest Netanyahu. Now, he wasn't interested in this. Now, let's go back. Biden calls him up and invites him to the White House rather rapidly after many months of ignoring Netanyahu. Netanyahu comes back from the White House, and we have an invasion through the borders. What about the physical outposts? What about the cameras? What about the infrared cameras? What about the soldiers on the border? What about the sensors? What about the trackers? What happened? Why did it take so long to get help into Gaza? 7 to 8 hours, people that were victims were claiming. And why did I have to listen to the rockets coming in for 3 or 4 hours before the IDF planes did anything? You tell me. It's obvious. So they're not taking it far enough, but an investigation, not by the government, not by the military, not by Netanyahu, maybe by the courts or independent investigator, but there is no such thing in Israel, may ascertain something like this. So he could be keeping this war dragging out to make sure there is no such investigation. So now he's worried about his criminal trial, and he's worried about an investigation, a double-pronged sword. And they don't want to change the leader during the war. See, they don't make sense. The people at the top are not smart people. It's this protexia. Yair Lapid, the leader of one of the biggest political parties in Israel, has an 8th grade education. He was a TV announcer. protects you. So you might see some people rebelling against the government when this is over. Or you might see some rebelling against the government right now. But look, when you're dealing with the hostage thing, you got to really cut him some slack, because there's a lot of people that want to see their loved ones get returned. But what he did, he traded the lives of soldiers that are most likely going to be killed in the future, of course, of this, to get the hostages back because it looks better. And this is going to prolong the war. They're going to move from North Gaza to South Gaza freely. And then we're going to have to go clean the hornet's nest up down there in South Gaza. Which will take weeks and weeks. You see? I don't know what this mental midget Netanyahu is hoping and waiting for, but I guess every day is a good day if he's not in jail, you know? If God wanted to make Israelis sick and tired of having a democracy, Netanyahu would be the perfect prime minister. 10 American soldiers were killed were injured, in a missile attack in Iraq last night, I think it was. And they fought back a little bit, but they're still not bearing down. They're not. And that's probably because they're waiting to get more equipment here. Now, I heard something, and I don't know if it's true. I think it's a rumor, but it might be true. America has, I believe, fitted laser cannons, let's call it that, onto F-22 Raptor jets, which is their best jet. And the rumor is, and I wouldn't call it more than a rumor, that they're sending those jets to Israel. Are they going to give them to Israel, or are they going to operate them? I don't know. These jets can be used to shoot down incoming missiles and rockets. The lasers fire at the speed of sound. Speed of light, which is like 250,000 miles an hour or something like that. No, not it's like 200. Let me check it. I don't remember. This is high school kid physics. It's 300, roughly 300 million meters a second. Hold on a second. It's about 671 million miles an hour. So it could work at distance, you know. Israel has these things, we call it Iron Beam. And they tested one the other day, and it did take down a missile. I don't know how many more they're going to put into action. I hope they put a lot of them into action. It probably costs about $1 a shot just for the electricity, and it can probably go many thousands of shots. So it's very useful in swarm attacks. There's no reloading, you know. But they were unable to make a laser powerful enough to operate as a weapon and a counter weapon without putting a burdensome electronic generator system in the jet aircraft. And also, it had to be shrunk in size to not be prohibitive. So while Israel has one of these, well, we make them here. So we've got these systems. They're large and they're put on a truck. They're not to be installed in a jet. So it's rumored America is going to either give these to Israel, sell these to Israel, or bring them over here and use them themselves with their own American pilots. I don't know yet. And I haven't really been able to get a hard confirm on this. Okay. Let me jump in the chat and see if there's anything it needs dealing with. No. All right. Hang on a minute. This is what Hamas says about the ceasefire. About an hour after it was announced early in the morning in Israel that the government had approved the release deal, Hamas issued an official proclamation in which it reported on its behalf the details of the deal. Now, this is the Hamas version of the deal. After a difficult, complex, and long negotiation, we announce that we have reached the humanitarian Hudna, which means a hostage exchange, the word Hudna, agreement, a temporary ceasefire of hostilities for 4 days. Thanks to the efforts of Qatar and Egypt, these are the details. Cessation of hostilities by both of the occupation army all over the Gaza Strip, and stopping the movement of maneuvering tools. I guess that's construction equipment and other tanks, I don't know. Bringing in hundreds of trucks of humanitarian, medical, and fuel to all areas of the Strip, north and south. The release of 50 of the women and children under the age of 19 from the occupation prisoners in exchange for the release of 150 of the women and children under the age of 19 from the prisoners of occupation. Stopping the occupation's aircraft movements completely in southern Gaza Strip for 4 days. That's because they don't want you to see them coming into the south, right? Cessation of all occupation aircraft traffic in the northern Gaza Strip for 6 hours a day between 10 o'clock and between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. So they don't want us surveillancing them during those periods. During the entire Hudna period, the occupation will not make arrests in all areas of the Gaza Strip. Freedom of movement on Salah al-Din axis from north to south will be guaranteed. That's just a road. The agreement will help to strengthen our people's steadfastness in the face of we're going to have a lot of trouble in the South they're going to flood in. And then the war is going to continue all over again in the south. And Netanyahu got to know this. The agreement will help to strengthen our people's steadfastness in the face of aggression. The negotiations and the occupation were conducted from a position of strength despite the occupation attempts to delay the negotiations. Along with the agreement, our fingers will continue to be on the trigger. We will continue to protect our people against the aggression of the occupation. So their version of it is a little bit different. Let me see what else is coming in now. Okay. The Qatari foreign minister says this is just the first phase in a longer ceasefire that will see additional Israelis freed from captivity in Gaza over the coming weeks and perhaps months if the deal can be extended. You see what's going on? Netanyahu's going to sell us out. But he can't. He has to keep this thing going or the judicial reform will happen again. The court will strike the laws down. It's worth noting that the Hamas version of the deal, of the ceasefire, did not talk about extensions of this for additional hostages. It could be they don't have any more hostages. They just got a few left that are alive. It could be it. They won't admit it because if they admit, well, all the hostages we gave back or they're dead, then there'll be more of an onslaught. Netanyahu vowed many times that there would be no ceasefire without the release of all Israel hostages. And Biden was saying things like that too. So you can't listen to anything Netanyahu says. He's a pathological expert liar. That's all he is. Well, there's been demonstrations already about this, but it's not going to go anywhere. See, if we took Hamas prisoners, which we did, we probably have hundreds of them by now, and we said we'll trade them back to you for the hostages, they'll say, no, kill them. They're martyrs. Do what you want to them. See, we can't behave that way. It's not right. It's wrong. So they're releasing a 19-year-old girl, a 16-year-old Palestinian girl, earlier this year stabbed and nearly killed a Jewish mother in front of her children in Jerusalem. The mother suffered serious injuries in the attack. She's being released. To go back to Hamas, right? Another one is 4 18-year-old Palestinians who planned and began to organize a suicide bombing in Jerusalem. They're being released. They're not releasing anybody that actually murdered a Jew. You know, this is what you get with the curse of Israel, Netanyahu, you know. The people need to come to grips with he has to be responsible for this, and it looks like they will. And that's why he'll just keep dragging out the war if he can, to avoid all of this. Deep down inside, I think Netanyahu knows he's going to, to quote, Tom Cruise in his Maverick movies, he's going to crash and burn. But he keeps hoping he's going to get out of it, There might be a flare-up in Lebanon. Oh, this is important. This is very important. Lebanon now. Israel demanded that the UNFIL, which is the UN peacekeeping forces that are in Lebanon, are not doing their job. Because according to the treaty, Hezbollah, only the Lebanese army could be down by the border. Then they're not. Hezbollah is, and they're not allowed to be there, and UNFIL is not stopping them. Okay, that's pretty clear. It's direct and easy to understand. While the forces are there, they're not doing their job. So, Israel demanded they do their job, which is not going to happen. And this is going to be the escalation of the war where Israel takes the preemptive strike against Hezbollah with the full blessings of America, because they want Hezbollah neutralized before they hit Iran. Why? One big reason is they may have to step in. They do not want to see Lebanon and Hamas and Syria and Iraq conquer Israel and take over Israel. Then the Middle East situation will be very hard and the oil will stop flowing. Then they will very quickly knock out Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Oman, and Kuwait, and the UAE, and Bahrain, and Qatar. And you'll be paying $15-20 at the pump in America or something like that. $10, $12, whatever. And they're very afraid of that. So they're not going to have that happen for their own selfish reasons. But this demand to UNFIL, to the UN, get your troops to do something, get Hezbollah out of the border. Israel said, if you don't do this, it's going to go to a regional war. So Israel is making a public declaration in front of the whole UN. The UN is not doing their job. They're not enforcing the treaty. And it's going to go to a regional war and put them on notice to do so, which I'm sure they're not going to do. They can't ignore it. They got to write a comment. And they'll say, well, they're doing their job. They're trying. They don't want to endanger their lives, stuff like that. And, it's going to blow up. And this, pay attention, this could be the intro or the entering of America into attacking Hezbollah to get rid of them so they can move on to Iran. Plus, it will infuriate Iran and possibly cause Iran to get more active in these Middle East actions in Iraq and Syria and make mistakes and suck Iran in so they can actually have a lot of good, politically correct opinions about stopping Iran. In other words, bombing them into smithereens. So that's a lot of good reasons why America may now enter into fighting Hezbollah. They're going to put the UN on notice, and then I believe they'll consider that the door open and go in. This is massive, what I just told you, because it means there's going to be an escalation, and I can't really definitively tell you if it'll be America and Israel. It'll be Israel for sure. The chances of the UNFIL doing anything about this to stop it, I would say, is about 0. Best case, slim and none, but really none. Hezbollah would just fight against them. They're not going to do it. They'd have to raise, 5,000, 2,500, 3,500 soldiers with armor. And, they'll tell Hezbollah, get out of here. And Hezbollah would say, go fly a kite. What are you going to do about it? Boom, boom, boom. What are you going to do about it? You're going to shoot me? Go. Come on. See what happens. Shoot me. It's not going to go anywhere. So that opens up the door for America to come in, because they're going to say the United Nations was unable to perform the duty, so we're enforcing it. Something like that. They might prefer to go in under the guise of enforcing this UN treaty to get Hezbollah out of the border areas. That's the dog snarl, Chief. The chief. So they could even come in under the guise or the cover story of, protecting the treaty, enforcing the treaty, and so forth. It'd be, I don't know what it's going to feel like. What are we, around day 45 or something of the war? 47, I think, something like that. I don't know what it's going to feel like to not have the rockets come in, I want to tell you, in the past, many times I've seen Hamas, specifically Hamas, break ceasefires. Loads of time. I honestly expect them to do it this time. And that's probably why they weren't talking about exchanging additional hostages. One, they may not have them. They may not know what they are. For real, or they may be dead. Or they're so abused, these women could have been raped hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times by now. They don't want them coming back to Israel and getting on CNN and telling them what it was like to be raped 8 or 10 times a day, or whatever the statistics prove to be. So they, very likely that's what's going on, Or they could have been tortured or beaten or abused. Same thing. So, it's probably going to move forward. I don't know how successful it'll be in the long run. I think it'll be bad. I think they'll break it. So what they could do is they could, run around and get supplies from all over Gaza, where they have, missile warheads are over here, tail fins are over here, fuselage for the missiles over here, the fuel for the missiles here. They can get everything pieced together again, probably including from the south, and run their crews 24/7 and make as many missiles as they can. And then probably on the third day or before the fourth day is over, launch large barrages of missiles into Israel and break the ceasefire. I expect them to break the ceasefire. I expect it. And now they've got more equipment to make more missiles. More Israeli civilian communities are going to get hit with missiles. More soldiers. We've got about 65 or 67 deceased soldiers from the combat in Gaza. More soldiers will get killed. All this to keep that schmuck Netanyahu, the curse on Israel, out of jail. I'd put the whole thing on his head as prime minister. There should be an investigation by an independent party, not part of the government, or by the courts. No American investigations, please. So, yeah, there you have it. I don't know what it'll be like not hearing missiles for 4 days. People will be very happy. Some of the soldiers may go home on leave for a day or two. But that's a dangerous game to play. But if we took small amounts of them, let them go home for a day and then come back, it might work out. But we got to stay on guard, or they'll no telling what they would do, The pilots will have a chance to rest. I mean, these things went on during World War II, I think, also. I think they had ceasefires on Christmas at times, the Germans anyway. The Japanese didn't know what Christmas was. People ask me here, what about Thanksgiving in Israel? Do you think they know what Thanksgiving is in Israel? They don't. They may have heard of it. They don't know what it is. Do they know what Black Friday is in Israel? Oh my gosh, do they ever. They got Black Friday all over Israel, but do they know it's key to Thanksgiving? That it's the Friday after Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving is on a Thursday, the third Thursday of the month? Do they know that? No. Do they know what Thanksgiving represents in America? No, they don't know anything like that. They don't have any idea. What happens on Christmas here? You wake up. Do I see Christmas trees? No. Do I see reindeer on the lawn or the roof with Santa in the sled? No. Do I see candy canes in the... No, none of that. Nothing. Is it nice? I love it. When I was in the States, I used to take cruises on Christmas just to get away from it. The cruise boats normally have a Christmas tree someplace, usually by one of the staircases, and it's a, 25-foot tree, a substantial tree. Some of the cruise boats, like Disney, would have a Santa on there, and the elves and the reindeer, and the kids would sit on his lap and garbage like that, But they have a Christmas menu, which is usually has turkey and stuff on it, ham and Christmas ham, turkey, and once I asked one of the guys in the old cruise days, back around 1999, I guess, or 98, 99, 99, what's it like on the cruise ship? This guy was from Nassau, so they were very friendly people. You could relate to them. They had a great sense of humor. They enjoyed it. They made a lot of money. And they'd work some years on the cruises and go home and open up a restaurant or a bar or a little hotel or something like that, And they were, you could kid around with these guys. They were a ball, So I said, what's it like, being on the ship for Christmas? He says, oh, for the guests, it's great. For the workers, it stinks, So they got rid of the guys from Nassau and Jamaica, and they got cheaper workers from Asia and from Russia and Poland, East European countries, and they're no fun. people don't like giving them tips. They don't know how to get friendly with people. They, the guys from Nassau, Jamaica, and they were regular people. You could talk to them. They knew what the Yankees were. They knew what the Knicks are. You could, not that I follow sports, but I mean, they understood American culture. They'd been to America a lot of times. They were fun. You kid around with them. They were really nice, and they'd help you. They knew how to help you with the boat. How do I do this? Where do I go here for the? They knew all this stuff. And they were good. They were working as serving drinks, serving food, and some of them were and the cleaning of the rooms and stuff. They were a lot of fun. You can make friends with them, but these other people were cold as ice cubes. You couldn't do anything with them. It didn't work. Didn't work out. But they're still there. That's who they use. They got cheaper labor. We were using the same cruise line, Becca and I think it was Royal Caribbean, and we kept getting the same cabin steward. They probably did it on purpose. And her and her husband both worked there together as a team, cleaning the cabins. And she was a ball. She was a believer, and she was a lot of fun. But, that's pretty unusual, So what to expect in quick summation? Lebanon with Hezbollah is going to escalate. Things will be quiet for a brief period of time in Hamas, and then it's going to be worse. Thank you, Netanyahu. Syria is pretty tame right now. They're concentrating on America. It's not tame for America. It's anything but tame. America is waiting maybe to bring those F-22s with the lasers down here. They might be installing lasers on F-22s, and they need to wait till they could get 8 or 10 of them or 12 of them or something, because those will be useful to stop swarm attacks of drones and missiles. They're still flying planes in to various places in the theater here, and it looks like all signs are a go. And I think that this is America attacking Hezbollah to enforce the UN treaty will give them a golden opportunity wrapped in silk bows to provoke Iran further, because they've got the greatest alibi in the world. Well, the UN can't enforce the treaty, we will. They won't slur the UN. They'll just say, we'll step in and do it for them. And that's what they'll do, I think. That way they can make, between us and America, we can make swift work out of Hezbollah and drive them away from the border, which is going to cut down most of the rockets. And then somebody will have to go there and enforce it to keep them out of there. Now, I don't know who's going to do that, but it'll happen. And that's basically the buffer zone, 25 miles probably. And then America's closer to attacking Iran. They got to get rid of this nest of vermins in Iraq and Syria that keep attacking their bases and wounding their guys. They got to get rid of them, and then Hamas should be neutralized, Hezbollah neutralized, the Iraqi militias in Syria and Iraq that are the various militias that are attacking American bases, which are puppets of Iran, are neutralized. Then they can start bombing the beach in Iran at the south by the Persian Gulf, and then if they're going to go for the invasion, go for the invasion. And that's what I think is going to happen here. And then the snare will be sprung with the Pacific and China in the Pacific, North Korea in the Pacific, and Russia in Europe, and they'll start getting America stretched out too thin, and that's the end of it. Then they invade America. And that's what I got. So, I send my, please pray for me, Moshe, and my wife Rivka. Pray for our peace, safety, protection, joy. Pray for healing. Pray for our finances. Thank you for the offerings, those that are giving. Offering information's in the description box under the video. We take Patreon and GoFundMe, and my email address is also there down at the bottom and in the chat. And pray for our animals and pets that are all rescues, and pray for the peace of Yerushalayim. And make sure you subscribe so you get sudden updates if things start getting hot and hairy. And I thank you and send my shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach, and I'm out.